Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and on behalf of Broadcast Beat, I'd like to welcome you to the first of our live TV shows here at the 2015 NAB, brought to you from the Teradek stand. I'm Janet West, and over the next 3 days, we're going to attack some interesting topics. Today, it's going to be 2K, 4K, 8K, is that okay? Tomorrow, we'll be looking at storage, workflows, and cybersecurity. And on Wednesday, for our last show, we'll be looking at, or having a discussion about, where's broadcast really going? Now today I've got two very interesting guests with me. Firstly, to my left, I've got Mark Shipman-Muller, who is product manager for camera systems. Mark's specifically responsible for the Alexa and is based in Berlin. And next to him is Steve Cooperman, who is Senior Product Manager for Panasonic, responsible for the VariCam, P2, Pro Video, and Business Development. Welcome, guys.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
4K at the show, you see it on all the posters, you see it on a lot of the stands or the booths. Do you know, is it really going to dazzle consumers? Is it ready for consumers, the 4K?
You want to go?
I believe so. And
tell us
and
why,
obviously
Steve.
I'm biased because I work at Panasonic, but we both have, obviously for the last several years, customers have been shooting in 4K, not necessarily to deliver in 4K, but to future-proof, maybe for an archive. And we hear from a lot of customers, at least at Panasonic, big broadcast customers, hey, people aren't broadcasting over the air, WABC isn't broadcasting 4K. But one of the things we're starting to see is a huge growth in different delivery type formats for 4K. People like Amazon and Netflix, for example, have 4K streaming. Us with our, Panasonic with our VariCam 35 has had a couple of television pilots shot that were shown on Amazon. Amazon who mandated native 4K for the production. People like Netflix, you think about House of Cards, not necessarily for 4K, but that type of content just a couple of years ago you would only see on somebody like some major studio type like HBO or Showtime or something like that. And now it's on Netflix that wasn't considered that high of a level of a brand, but just to show you how the market dynamics are changing. Other sorts of mediums, delivering formats like DBS, like DirecTV, they advertise, see Star Trek in 4K. I was looking online yesterday, and there's in India, Tata Sky, also a DBS. They were advertising watching cricket in 4K. I don't think I'll be watching cricket in 4K, but I think the incredible growth in these other delivery type formats. I think as we start seeing more television, sets. Future Source predicts there's going to be 40% of the TVs will be 4K by 2018. Whether you believe it, whether you don't, definitely your next TV, you buy your next one this week, it's HD. You buy a TV next year, it's probably 4K. So you're going to have more sources, more delivery formats, more eyeballs.
Mark, what do you feel?
Well,
are we ready for it, and which market might it really be going into?
Well, we're interestingly seeing a lot more demand from the OTTs, Netflix, Amazon, as you've mentioned, than from the traditional movie market. The movie people still do a lot of stuff in 2K. They shoot in 2K, they post in 2K, and that's a very interesting dichotomy we have right now. Now, we've upgraded our products. We have the Alexa line of cameras, has 3.4K sensors, and we do an in-camera upres to 4K. So all our cameras now can also do 4K for the future-proofing argument. And we also have a 65mm camera for those who want the largest number of pixels, for the special effects guys. And that's been a big success for us.
What is the reluctance in the movie market then?
I honestly
it took us a long time to get them to accept 2K, didn't it?
Well, I think part of it is faces. I think in 4K you have so much resolution that it's really tricky to shoot faces. And shooting a movie is all about telling a story with humans, and you look at these faces all the time.
Yeah.
So I think they'll eventually get there, but it'll probably take them longer than television. I think television is pushing things right now. Now, the other interesting discussion that is happening right now is if the higher resolution is enough to get consumers. and there's the consensus building that we probably need something else. And that might be high dynamic range, it's probably the one candidate. It might also be higher bit depth, higher frame rate. So I think there's a lot of happening, and we don't yet know if 4K is it. I think there's another step above that where we're going towards.
Is that going to be 8K?
Well, I personally
or is
think
it enhancements in 4K?
I personally think it's more high dynamic range, because if you look at a high dynamic range display, that's an immediate effect. You see that. I personally think 8K is still a long ways off, and I don't know what the benefit for that is, because you would need a living room the size of the studio to actually get the benefit of an 8K display.
Which is okay if you're in the States, but certainly not in Europe, where you and I come from.
True.
Steve,
in the middle of the country.
Okay.
Bigger property.
Steve, I want to ask you, from a broadcast perspective, the traditional broadcasters, whether it's in the US or in Europe, are they ready for 4K? Do they want it, or is it considered, they feel it's being pushed upon them?
I mean, good question. Just in 2009, we finalized the HD transition in the United States, and leading up to that, we had very good sales of HD cameras in 2008 and before that, not just for the transition, but for the elections and the Olympics. And now, as I see us approaching another cycle here, we're going into 2016, elections, Olympics, are some driving forces along with the technology. So I don't think they necessarily want to, and like we were mentioning earlier, I don't know if you're necessarily just going to see it over the air 4K, but they're definitely looking at it, and not necessarily just for traditional applications, but for example, we introduced this morning or announced a new 4K box camera as well as a 4K studio camera. And instead of just cinema applications, they're 4K, providing 4K resolution, but utilizing 2/3 inch lenses, non-PL, non-cine type lenses for applications that are more broadcast oriented. Doesn't necessarily mean your 5 o'clock news, but again, more broadcast type applications. So, again, maybe it's not being broadcasted that way, but that's a way to bridge into the ability to get 4K for live events and sports and different things that maybe aren't broadcasted in 4K, but they're using 4K. And then I think some of them are looking at alternative, again, means of distribution, whether it be streaming or whatnot.
So with some of the broadcasters looking at going online, then potentially online services might actually be the first to deliver 4K.
Again, we'd have to ask the broadcasters, but I've heard some of them, some of the broadcasters have cable wings as well. Everybody's looking for different revenue streams.
Okay. With the increase in the number of pixels, is this requiring a lot more energy for the cameras, whether it's from Panasonic or from Arri?
Not really. With the cameras essentially are supercomputers these days, and Moore's law works. We always get more powerful processors, so we can process all these pixels now with the same power requirements that we used to process HD images a couple of years ago. So I don't think the cameras need more power. However, managing the heat inside the cameras is becoming an issue, and we have to be very careful about that, because we have supercomputers now running on the set.
They get hot.
They do get hot, this is true.
Okay. Mark, we were talking earlier, and we were talking about the ACES. Can you tell me a little bit about that and what's also happening with the ITU Rec 709?
Sure. ACES is a project by the Academy, and they're trying to provide a general color space that any camera manufacturer's images can come into. Because in the past, a lot of post houses, they would have their secret sauce, and a lot of times the images weren't compatible amongst each other. So with the ACES now, theoretically, if it gets adopted, and there's a big push from the Academy right now, you'll be able to shoot something with one camera, put it in the ACES color space, and then process it and combine it with images from another camera very easily.
Okay.
So that's the ACES, and then Rec 2020 is a standard that's being created for UHD, 4K as well as 8K, and that includes the pixel raster as well as the color space. Now, most of the 4K displays you see right now will have the Rec 2020 pixel raster, i.e. UHD 3840 by 2160, but they don't have the Rec 2020 color space yet. That is still Rec 709, With our latest camera, the Alexa SXT, we already output a direct 2020 image signal, so once the monitors come online, the camera already provides the signal, so you can monitor and preview that on the set.
Mm-hmm. Now, when I mentioned 8K earlier, it was, I don't think that's actually going to happen. But does that mean with 4K we've reached the ultimate? We've actually reached a resolution which is, if we go any further, will be beyond what the human eye can resolve?
I personally think so, yes. I think, I mean, even right now, if you go and see a movie with a 4K projector, only the first 5 to 10 rows, depending on the size of your movie theater, will actually be able to see 4K. Anybody beyond that sees a 2K image just because of the limits of the human vision.
So I guess for 8K you'll be fighting to get in the first row only, and that'll be it. What do you feel about 8K, Steve?
I mean, companies like Panasonic, there's an 8K discussion in our tech suite. I've seen some other Japanese companies and broadcasters talking about it. I mean, I tend to agree there's not going to be any immediate 8K, but I think you will see people wanting to use it for major events, maybe, you know, for the 2016 Olympics, for the World Cup.
The big concerts, that sort of thing.
Things like that, I think, because obviously revenue drives manufacturers to build things, and there is possibilities to implement the 8K technology, maybe not widely based. So yeah, I think people will use it, but I don't think you're going to have a huge 8K craze like we are with the 4K, just because of the limits of the data and the workflow and where you're going to show it. But I think for those grand events, I think you might see some usage for more of the grand things.
Yeah, I actually
not episodic TV necessarily.
I would agree. I think what we might see is that for different applications, you're going to choose what you're going to shoot. You're going to shoot 4K, you're going to shoot 8K, you're going to shoot HD.
28K even.
Sure, why not? Well, you know, for car shows, they do the craziest things for these car shows, so that might be applicable.
And car shows, these are people that have a tremendous amount of money and an
Exactly.
advertising budget, where there's a benefit to having a tremendous amount of resolution, and maybe you're not going to be displaying, just like people today will sometimes shoot 4K for HD, and they give you more ability to zoom in and do whatnot. Could be applications for shooting 8K, for producing 4K, let's say, where you're just doing super zoom-ins and other
So you're getting the
sorts of effects.
maximum amount of resolution that you can play around with in post then.
Super, yeah.
Okay, let's talk about cameras generally. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to wander around the show at all. You've probably been stuck on your stands.
Yes, we have.
But are there any new camera ideas? We see a lot of drones, for example, that you'd like to comment on, that you think is perhaps a new market area for cameras?
Sure. Well, the brushless gimbals is a technology that is pushing the new handheld rigs like the Movi, as well as the remote-controlled heads underneath the drones. And in order to address this market, we've taken the Alexa camera and shrunk it, and have made something called the Alexa Mini, which is a
you've got a mini drone camera.
It's a mini drone camera, yes, for the Movi. It's a tiny cube like this, 5 pounds, does almost everything the Alexa does, and we've had a tremendous success with that. We have so many orders right now, the manufacturing people are seriously considering increasing manufacturing capacity. So I think that is a new market. How long that'll last, we'll see. We've had the 3D craze, we've had other crazes. If that's a craze or if that'll stay, we'll have to see. But for now, I think that's one of the new things.
Okay, Steve, any comments on the new?
I mean, I haven't had this is the most I've walked outside the booth this
Well, I'm glad you came to our show. Thank you.
I'm here as well. But definitely right by the Panasonic booth, there is a drone manufacturer. Clearly, drones are a big craze. I know that definitely people are looking to shoot in different sorts of applications. You mentioned, Movi, whether it be Movi, Steadicams, jibs and whatnot. With our VariCam 35, it's got a modular design, and it was set up in such a way that essentially the front and the back of the camera can be detached, and for two reasons. One, to replace the head with an HD head, but the other thing is to put a high-speed cable between the two. Maybe not quite for a drone in this situation, but for the situation where you have the camera controller at the let's say inside of a helicopter, and you have the camera mounted outside on a mount, or in a car, different kind of shooting situations, or in a Movi type situation. So we are seeing a definite increase in people that want very high quality video, but they don't want to they don't want to sacrifice video with small POV cameras to get the shot they want. So they're taking advantage of these different sort of third-party technologies.
Okay. You brought up one point just now, Steve, about the modularity of the VariCam. And I know Ari has looked in some of their lighting for sustainable lighting. Is the modularity in the camera to try and reduce resources that are being used, so you're perhaps having the same chassis but different modules on it? From an environmental perspective, we've got to look at trying to reduce a little bit of what we are putting out there and then making redundant 6 months later. So is this a strategy that Panasonic has to try and be more sustainable with their products?
Are you talking about energy sustainability or sustainability?
Energy and resources.
Being a Japanese company, they always talk about, eco-efficiency. But one of the reasons is just the concept that, imagine you're shooting sports and you're on the football field on Sunday and shooting with the HD camera, the VariCam HS head with your long, 2/3 inch Fujinon lens. Now you go back to the hotel, it's Monday morning, hop on a plane, go somewhere, and you're shooting a interview, potentially a doc interview. Now you put on the 35 millimeter head with the PL lens for your interview. And you've got both cameras already, each camera front is set up and the back is the same with the cabling and power and the workflow. So more of that concept. We do take a lot of feedback from customers, the voice of customers, which helped us to design the VariCam, and there was interest in that, and it does open the ability to have different sort of front heads to the camera that connect to the back.
Okay. Mark, with the Alexa, have you looked at trying to put in sustainability factors into the development of the camera? I know you're doing it in your lighting.
Sure, yes, we have. We looked at that in terms of manufacturing, but I think we're always faced with that because we operate off batteries. So our cameras need to be take as little power as possible to do their jobs.
Yeah, cameras end up in the strangest of locations at times, don't they? Okay, well, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming and joining me on the Broadcast Beat live shows from NAB. I'd like to thank you very much and remind everyone that tomorrow at 5 o'clock to 5:30 again, I'll be talking about storage, workflows, cybersecurity, and I have another group of interesting guests. On behalf of Broadcast Beat, I'm Janet West, and thanks for joining us.